Well, good
You're
evening,
welcome.
everybody, and welcome to our Tiny Talk Tuesday. We're happy you guys are all here. Um, we have a little snafu with our speaker this evening, who's actually located in Australia and might be just a little confused on the time, but that's okay. We're going to make the best of it as soon as we just let you know that this is being recorded and it is in our member portal for our members and those of you that have signed up to watch these videos later. So I do have to let you know it's being recorded. If you don't want to be recorded or have your name on there, then just hit that exit button. But we hope that you stay. Anyway, tonight is our codes and standards. We're having a chat. Robin's going to help us out with some different topics, and we hope you guys enjoy it either way. And hopefully we can have Mr. Daniel back again. Either he might tune in the next few minutes, or we'll just invite him to come back another time. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Robin, our host and CEO of NOAA. Thank you.
Welcome everybody. And once again, it's really my pleasure. I'm honored to have you guys on here. We hopefully are bringing something of value to you that you can continue to come back and re-listen to over and over again. And so until we do get if and when we do get a speaker, we wanted to share some things that were on your mind, ask some questions, share some things, and maybe be able to answer some questions that you might have. So Jason, you had raised your hand, so I'm going to come to you first and unmute your mic. And what's your question?
All right, thank you. Yes, we're at the very beginning stages of our build, and we just signed up with NOAA, so we're excited to learn all about using the manual and the whole process. But my question really comes down to, we got a custom-made frame from out of state. We're very happy with it. It does have flush cross members with the pan welded underneath it, and it's a 28-foot long trailer, steel. The question is, what's the best way to approach mitigating the possibility of thermal bridging from the get-go? What are some ideas about that? We are in Central Florida. We're in the Orlando and North area, so it's not terribly cold where we're at.
Which doesn't mean it's going to stay there, though, because it is on wheels, obviously. Even if you sell it to somebody, it could move. So that's always the challenge. Do you have the trailer right there? Can you show us it?
No, I wish I could, but I don't. I could do it.
Who did you get it from?
We got it from the trailer shop in Ephrata, Pennsylvania.
Okay. All right.
They supply tiny home builders in the eastern Pennsylvania area up there.
All right. So normally when we see something like that, it's usually a drop axle. It has 2-inch by 5-inch or 2-inch by 6-inch tube steel and 2-inch by 3-inch cross members, and either an L angle for an outrigger, or they go ahead and put the 2-inch by 3-inch cross members, same material as an outrigger, with a band on the outside. So that's normally what we see. That's not what is in. Is that what it looks like?
That's pretty much what it is. Yeah. Because the cap on the outer perimeter are 6-inch deep, but the ones on the interior are the L angle with they're 5 inches deep.
Yeah. Okay. All right. So, and they're tube steel, 2-inch by 5-inch or 2-inch by 6-inch.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. All right. Sounds like it's a good strong trailer. Did you say it was 28 feet long?
28 feet long. Yes.
All right.
Triple axle.
Are you going to have a loft in it?
Yep. The loft, just one loft.
All right. So usually a triple axle is 21,000 pounds, or usually 7,000 pound axles when you get to a triple axle. And so the question that Jason has is, what's the best way to mitigate the thermal bridging? What thermal bridging is that when you have metal or something like metal that transfers heat very easily, metal's one of the things. Then if it's cold outside and it's warm inside, then you're going to transfer the cold to the inside. And if it's hot outside and cold inside, then you're going to transfer the heat to the inside. So it's a thermal transfer, and it's called thermal bridging. And what we require, which is really it's like the minimum that you can do, is a what we call a sill seal, this pink material that you roll out. I think DJ, you saw us putting some of that down yesterday on the trailer we were putting on. That's the minimum. If you want to go above that, and of course, what type of insulation are you going to put in the trailer itself?
So we had one plan of doing spray foam on the walls and ceiling. We were going to do rigid foam board insulation in the cavity before we put the that foam seal that you're describing, before we put the subfloor on top of that. And then we were learning some things that this is where the question comes in, because I'm sure that there's different opinions about it, but we were learning that it's probably we got the drop axles. We wanted more headspace, and now someone recommended building a wood frame and insulating that before putting your subfloor on top of that. And so we thought we were going to not have to do anything like that because we got the flush cross members.
Yeah, and in reality, you don't. Obviously, if you did, it's going to be more insulation. The wood does act as a thermal barrier and all of that. However, if you lose 3.5 inches of ceiling of height in it, that's going to that is going to pretty much kill your loft. As far, minimum on a loft is 36 inches, and usually we can get about 42 inches depending upon your ceiling height of whatever's above the loft, and that kind of thing. So yeah, my recommendation on that, if you want to go the extra mile, there is a product out there that has, I think it's a 30 PSI. It's not your regular Armax 1/2 inch or 3/4 inch foam board. It actually is a foam board that has a structural component to it. And I would put that down on top of your trailer, all over the whole thing. Put your insulation in, however you're planning on insulating it, with rigid foam, and then take your great stuff or whatever kind of foam you're going to seal it with, seal that up, and then over the whole thing, rather than using the sill seal, I would put down that 1/2 inch of structural rigid foam, and that way you have a good product, and it's going to give you a good thermal barrier, and then that would solve your problem.
You know how thick that is that you're describing?
You can get 1/2 inch, 3/4, or 1 inch. It depends upon how much you want to reduce your height in your loft, basically. So 1/2 inch would be sufficient. If you want to go a little extra, go 3/4 inch.
Thank you. And do you know what like the R value is on that?
It's a R7 per inch.
Okay.
But we're not using it for R value so much. We're using it more for thermal bridging, but it does add some R value.
So if I wanted to pass the inspection, the R value needs to just come from what's underneath that, for example?
No, you can add, you want in the floor, the only R value you need is R13. So you can still pass the R value in the floor by adding to whatever you have in rigid foam, adding to that the 1/2 or 3/4 inch of foam that your structural foam that you're going to be putting on there.
Thank you. And do you recommend putting holes in those cavities and some screen to allow moisture to escape?
Not really. If your pan was spot welded and not welded all the way around, I wouldn't put any holes in it.
There is some daylight, and there's a little bit of daylight that comes through it, but not in every single area.
Yeah, well, usually what they do is they spot weld it, and that gives you enough room for any moisture to get out. If they didn't weld it all the way around, and you don't seal it all the way around with caulking or something, I think you'll be fine.
Okay, thank you.
All right, all right. Well, it looks like our guest has arrived. DJ, do you want to introduce him? You've been communicating with with him? Why don't you have at it? Or did he just leave? Oh, there he is. Okay.
No, I'm here.
There it is. There you go. Hey, Daniel.
Hi, how you going?
Sorry for the confusion. Glad
That's okay. Yeah, I didn't get the
glad you're
link.
with
It's-
us.
Sorry, yeah, and a bit of a. I've got my sick 3-year-old home today too, so hopefully I don't have to run out anytime soon because it's just me on my own today. So hopefully we get a good clear run.
All right. Or bring him in the room with you. Yeah.
Oh, he
I
might
was just
come in,
telling
but he'll take the
I was
meeting
just-
over if he does.
I was I was just telling everyone about your fabulous research on the effect of tiny homes in communities where there are needs, and especially you focused on the African community, African American community, which I thought was absolutely brilliant, and it's so generalizable to many other communities, not just here in the United States, but in the world, and what a positive impact that could have.
Definitely. Look, it's something we're looking at doing here as well. I think you guys have sort of led the way with that. I'm not sure how much you hear about here, but there is a housing crisis here at the moment too. As far as cost effectiveness goes, this is probably one of the best ideas. For a while, I've been sort of talking with government and charities as well, trying to set up a village as a flagship set up basically to show them what can be done. As far as costs go, I'll give you some comparisons. So we had recently, there was a building industry here that were asking for, I think it was $10 billion from the state government to set up housing. And this was, I'm not even sure how much they were setting up. It was only for a few hundred people. This was in conjunction with unions, which we know half that money would have gone to them. And the time taken, trying to find the land, all the permits, everything else was taken forever and a day. Our proposal with one village, I think our village housed 60 people and the cost was $3.5 million. We're still trying to push that through with Salvation Army, actually, charity here. As far as a quick solution to a house shortages here, that's probably one of the best ways to go. So we're slowly trying to push that through. We just had a state election in my state of Victoria, so it's time to sort of chase up our politicians that made some promises and said they'd look into it a little bit more. Fingers crossed it happens, but we're not too sure at the moment. But I think there's also one in New Zealand as well. It's been constructed as well. There are people here that are trying to do an off-grid one. Actually, it's basically one of the first ones. So there's about 2 or 3 around the country at the moment. But as far as for homeless people and domestic abuse victims, there's nothing available yet. So while people like the idea here, they don't always act on it straight away. And obviously not having regulation, not being a regulated industry, it can obviously cause some headaches. And then here we've got a lot of red tape with councils and what you can do with the land. So we have a lot of hoops to jump through, but we're hoping to achieve this. I think too, one of the only reasons why government are skeptical too, because they can't see a way to make money on it. They can be a bit greedy sometimes, and unions and backing with the bigger companies. So that's something we're pushing, trying to get publicity. I think
Daniel, let me jump in the middle here, if you don't mind.
Of course.
Yeah, a couple of questions came to my mind as you were talking. Number one, a way to make money. Well, if you can do it without having to have government subsidies of, what'd you say, $10 billion, then obviously, when we talk about affordable housing here, we're talking about housing that is government subsidized. So we kind of have changed the term and called it attainable housing here. But we really mean that housing is within the price range of the average middle class American. So that's one point. And number two, did you say that you were going to house 60 people and what was your price for that you were asking for?
That was 3.5 million.
3.5 million. Now,
Yeah.
is this money coming from the government or is it
Yeah.
money? Okay, so this would.
Yeah, I mean, the other option we're thinking, because we're getting hard to get money from the government, we're going to maybe fund it ourselves, and a mixture of philanthropists. There's a couple of organisations that do something similar, so we're trying to sort of work together to pull the money together. The costs probably have changed a little bit now. These figures were pre-COVID. Since then, we've had because my background's building, so I do a lot of construction, housing, materials, and cost of labour. Everything's gone up since. So the cost would be slightly more, but in all, it's still cheaper than so many billions. and it's a lot quicker too. It's a quicker process. Yeah, it's hard to explain here, but our union movement here with the construction industry and commercial and government, especially in the state government we have and federal government at the moment, they're very strong backers of unions, and they sort of seem to pull the strings. So to have a project like this where they're not involved will be very hard to get the funding, because their mentality is, oh, where's the jobs for us or our people? And the thing is, they waste it. It's very corrupt as well, and I'm sure it is in a lot of places. So this thing we're looking at maybe having to do it on our own, and we assume that once we run up.
What is the you're in Australia, so obviously there's a difference between Australian dollars and US dollars. What's the conversion factor there? If we wanted to say 60 units for 3.5 million, what would that look like in US dollars?
US dollars, probably, I don't know what the conversion rate is at the moment. Probably 4.5 to 5 million.
So it would be more, 4.5 to 5 million. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
For
so
you guys, I mean,
more.
that's assuming though. I'm not sure what your labor costs there are too. I think your labor costs are a little bit less than ours. So I'm not sure what you pay for materials. That's just purely on if I was to build them here. I'm not too sure what your costings are like there and labor, etc. But
We're the same. We've got price increases all across the board. I think everyone else on here that's a builder would agree that material prices have gone up. They've come down a little bit recently, but they really skyrocketed in the last 12 months or so.
Yeah, our timber has doubled in 18 months, and it hasn't come back either. But then also labor costs are going up, and because there's a shortage of tradesmen for some reason after a lockdown, some people tend not to go back to work and happy to live off government handouts. And we've probably lost about 30% of our industry. So we're really struggling to get workers. There's also a bit of a boom in construction. Once that's starting to slow down, the interest rates have started to go up quite significantly. So people are borrowing now. So that's sort of coming back down to normal. So I'm hoping also labor costs come down a touch, because people are demanding stupid prices because they could. As work becomes sort of more back to a normal level. Yeah.
Yep.
But,
well, you could be talking about the US. The same thing's happening here. So nothing's different.
yeah, it's everywhere.
So let me ask you, these 60 units, would they be on wheels that you would be
They are, yes.
building?
I think it was about 20, because what we had was also, we've got a lot of displaced families here as well. So some of these would have been maybe like a 9-meter trailer with lofts in them as well to house a family of 4. So we had a mixture in our proposal of ones for single people, one for couples, and then also families as well.
So 9 meters, for those of you that don't know meters
yeah,
very well, it's going to be about 40 feet. I think it's 39 inches for 1 meter, and so you're looking at about 40 feet long. And
Correct.
and do you go? What's your width? Do you go
2.4 here, which is, I'm trying to think. I know what it is in feet.
It's about 8. It's about 8 feet. 2.4
Yeah.
would. So it's about the same here. Are you building? And we have RV standards and codes here, and they call them caravan. Am I correct?
Correct. Yeah.
So they're called caravans in Australia. Is that the standard that you're building these to, caravan standards?
Pretty much, yeah. We've actually, with our ones, we've combined a mixture, because there is no regulation. We've combined ours with caravan regulations, as well as building regulations, just to make them, I guess, more sturdier.
How did you do that?
Combining knowledge, I guess, of.
Is it in writing anywhere, or you just say, I can build this wall with we call it a 2x3, but I want a 2x4 instead of a 2x3. Is that what you're doing, or are you actually writing these upgraded standards down somewhere?
The Australian Tiny Home Association, which I'm a part of, I'm actually the building advisor as well. We've started to create a code as well to try and get that implemented. So there is like a standard across Australia. So the way I've done this, obviously caravans and RVs are built differently with that, refrigeration paneling. They're a bit lighter. These things, we've built them like basically a house on wheels, at the same time having the right insulation, etc., and ventilation as you would a caravan. So it's just a combination. It was basically merging two codes together, our building code and the caravan one as well, and trying to find a happy medium. So I'll give you a quick little background of how we did this. So we've obviously got our trailers, which seem pretty standard. I've looked at some in America. They're very similar to ours. Our frames, we use our timber, so mainly 2x4 we used as well. That's 90-45 mil thick timber. When we tied the frame down to the trailer, obviously we bolted through the trailer. We also had something up north in Queensland where the cyclones, we call them cyclone rods. So that would be probably a 1/4-inch thread rod. And we run that through from the top plate all the way down to the bottom of the trailer to hold the whole frame in. And that runs through the trailer, bolt that in, and that prevents uplift. And that way everything is attached to the trailer. Some people might just take it in with nails or a few screws, but this way everything's attached together, the weight.
Yeah, we have that same system here. It's called the Go-Bolt system. But it's 1/2-inch rods. It's 1/2-inch rods, 1/2-inch anchor bolts, 1/2-inch rods. They go all the way through to the top plate. So just so everybody knows, you do not use 1/4-inch rods. Use 1/2-inch if you're doing things here in the US.
Well, we use 12 mil. Is 12 mil 1/4-inch or half? I can't remember. I'm trying to do a conversion.
Oh yeah, I don't
12
know.
mil, maybe
anybody can look that up.
An inch is 25 mil. Actually, no, we are using 1/2-inch. My bad. It is 1/2-inch.
Okay, great.
A lot of people don't do that though at all. But this is a method they use for housing up north where we have cyclones. So we had an engineer as well tell us. So roughly a 6-meter tiny home, which I'm trying to think is how many feet?
20.
20 feet. That's right. The weight of those on average, if you have about 3.5 tons, wind speed now, kilometers and miles. That's one thing I don't do good at.
Yeah. 3.5 tons is going to be we go by pounds, so we're probably 3.5, 2,000, be 10,000 pounds for 3.5 tons, and we usually build to 140 mile-an-hour wind. I don't know what you guys.
Totally conversion. Ours are the same. So ours are for about 270 kilometers. The engineering has found out that they can withstand up to 270 km/h winds, but look, they always give themselves a bit of leeway, so it's close to 300 kilometers. I'm not sure how many. I'm sure I could do a conversion in the phone quickly and find out, but 3.5 ton will withstand a 300-kilometer wind before it tips over, which it's very rare to get those winds out here. And then people go up to, most trailers these days, people go up to 4.5 tons, which again is very hard to tip over. So that's that's sort of what we're going by here, by that wind speed.
Now, when you say tip over, you know, obviously, if it's 8.5 wide, 8 to 8.5 wide, and 20 or 40 feet long, it's and it has a loft. Ours is 13.6 tall. You know, that is a pretty large area that could be hit with wind load and tipped over. So what we're doing here in the States is we're tying them down like a mobile home or a manufactured home with augers that go into the ground. Do you guys do anything like that out there?
Some people do, yes. It's more, again, where I live in my state, we don't get those winds that could possibly do that. Further up north, so it's like Northern Australia and even Western Australia, but further up north in Western Australia, people use, like you said, probably screw piles, we call them as well. Or they'll dig a big hole, like maybe on 4 corners of each, on each side of the home, and fill them with concrete, go quite deep, concrete, put an anchor in there, and then you can tie down to that as well. And tension at each side. That way you haven't got any chance of it tipping. So again, that's more something up north. Where I live, we don't get those winds, so we don't really have that problem. Except in the high country, possibly. On the rare occasion they do. So people do tie down. With our homes, we do allow, actually, we weld in little D-shackle on each corner. So on the frame, we have it welded on at the top of the home, so that it can be tensioned and tied down just in case if someone does.
So a lot of them here have the D-rings, what we call D-rings on them too.
Yeah.
So good. Now, I wanted to mention, I'd like to get a copy for everybody who's interested. I know I'm interested in, when say you're writing some standards for tiny houses that can be used across Australia. I would love to see the I would love to see those, but you know that there is an international standard. It's called ASTM.
Yeah, we're talking to them too, actually. So we're helping.
Okay, all right.
Yeah.
So you're familiar with that. Okay.
Yeah.
Well,
I mean,
that is something that is going on right now. That these are standards that could be international, not just in the US, but could be, used in Europe or Australia or New Zealand or whatever. But we're probably 8 months to a year out before we see those.
Yeah, we're following with the stairs, Appendix Q as well, that you guys have in that standard as well. So, yeah, I think our basically we're doing one for here, but also to present to ASTM as well. And then obviously it's going to be hard to have a global one where everyone has the same thing. Everyone has different climate, different conditions. So there'll be clauses here and there, but we made a start anyway. And Jeanette was quite happy with that actually from ASTM. So we're actually adjusting ours now, but once I get a legitimate copy, I'll definitely happy to email them across just for you to have a look. We've got a lot of references to our building code here, but we're going to change that and actually word it. And myself and a couple of other members are slowly working on a how-to guide for construction as well, like a framing manual. So it's all voluntary, so it's a long process because it's all in between our own day jobs, which is kind of hard at the moment. But we're getting there. Because I hear a lot of people like to do them on their own too, and they shouldn't. So at least this way they have a guide. They can kind of have something to go by. I've seen a few that aren't that great, but even people that are registered and have a background in building, I've seen a few that I probably wouldn't recommend someone buy. But it's until there's a standard, it's legalized. People can do what they want basically, and because the movement here is growing so quickly in Australia. There's a lot of say cowboys and people coming out of the woodworks and just think they can build tiny homes and making up these things and selling them for a fortune. And I had inspected one for a lady who was getting a mobile chapel built so she could do weddings out of it. And the guys who built this thing, it looked all impressive in the factory. When it came out of the factory, no, there were a lot of things that weren't. They used materials that weren't weatherproof.
Oh no.
They said the ColourBond roof was ColourBond. It was actually spray painted on. It was just normal corrugated. So then when it rained, it dripped everywhere.
Oh,
it was and they used MDF, which I know is banned in America. They used that on certain handrails outside and gave it a certain coating, which you couldn't tell, but water gets to it and ruin it still. So you're getting things like this coming out and people being none the wiser and paying a fortune for them. So we're trying
all the more reason to have some standards, and there's just a few bad guys out there, but they give everybody else a bad name.
Definitely
when they do
that's
stuff.
Across the building industry as well, for housing and everything else. They're constantly
and if we have time before our time is up, I'll share with everyone, or share with you and everyone, the NOAA standard that we have been working on, which is similar to what you're doing.
Yes.
So just
that's actually, I had a meeting last night with the Tiny Home Association, and your name came up as well, and we're talking about how to set up inspections here as well, third-party inspections. The only thing is, I think some of their ideas were people taking photos of stages along the way. My experience in building is that most inspectors will not want to sign up on something they haven't seen themselves, so they're worried about cost. Do you inspect during stages, or do people just send you videos or photos as they're progressing? How do you actually go about it? I'd be interested to know.
Well, actually, we developed NOAA to be like the building department for tiny houses on wheels. And we inspect each and every home. We inspect it at every stage of construction. And but we use a remote, and we use an app that you download, and then our inspectors are behind a computer screen instead of on site, and the builder or his designated person is on site that carries the smart device around and does what the inspector wants, so that there's less chance of cheating. In other words, we start with the VIN number if you have VIN numbers there,
Yes.
and then we pan out so we see the unit from all sides, and then we move in to do, let's say, an electrical inspection. We start with the electric panel, and then we digitize and store the entire inspection with video. And this app, you can take photos along the way, so they take photos and they can put inspector notes on there. So I'll share that. I'll be happy to share that with you.
Yes, that would
you
be great.
You want to know more about that.
Definitely, because it's something we're looking at trying to establish here as well. That sounds pretty good. Definitely. I think it's better having the video than just photos. So from my experience in building, inspectors used to kind of allow it here and there. Now there's too much liability on them for passing something that, you know, they haven't looked at properly if something goes wrong. So yeah, the video thing could work. Definitely. A lot of people do build these out in remote areas, and they're worried about cost of getting someone out there to inspect at each stage. So I guess this combats it. Another question actually for you, Robin, what's price do you charge for this service?
Well, we have a membership fee, depending upon whether you're a DIY or a manufacturer. Manufacturer membership fee is $1,388 a year. And then each seal with all the inspections and digitized and everything is $500.
Okay. Something we can look at here too. If you can send me some information, that would be great. I can put it towards our organisation here, give them a bit more of an idea, because it's something we're just sort of brought up last night actually in our meeting. So yeah, that would be good to see how you guys do it.
Sure. No, happy to share that information, and we can happily help you out. We're doing inspections, remote inspections in China, in Panama, in other states. Where are we in Europe? Somebody
Turkey.
remind me. Turkey. We're doing inspections in Turkey.
Okay.
But any units that are coming into the U.S. obviously have to meet U.S. standards. And because of our remote inspection process, we can do that and inspect and certify that it was built to that ANSI 119.5 is what we use. But we do plus that. Actually, we use very little out of ANSI. We were talking about that the other day. The walls aren't good enough. They're insufficient. The ceiling are insufficient. The insulation's insufficient. The windows are insufficient. The trailer's not the same. So there's very little in ANSI 119.5 that we use. We've had to pretty much write the NOAA Plus standard to change around everything in there, except the guardrails and the handrails on the loft. And you mentioned Appendix Q. And if you do Appendix Q, you can't do it for a tiny house on wheels.
Okay.
Would you guys be interested in me explaining to you why you can't use Appendix Q?
Yeah, fire away.
Is that something worthwhile?
Definitely, because we were trying to establish for our building codes, our regulations, which are very different for steps. But because you're limited in space as well, it's something we looked at. But
right. Well, this is your call, everybody. Derek and Catherine, is that something? Put in the chat or just say yes, thumbs up or something if you want me to show that. Because all right, I got one thumbs up there from Catherine. I mean, I don't want to waste your time, so yes. Well, it's TJ. You don't count. Is anybody else interested in Appendix Q, or should we just keep going? Okay, we'll just keep
going.
I
can chat later, or you can email me.
Yeah, if we have time at the end. I wanted to before we got you out of here. You know, DJ had talked a lot of stuff about what you were doing for the homeless and this kind of, and some theory behind it. DJ, do you want to kind of come on here and ask him a couple of questions, or do you just want to steer him in the right direction that that we were talking about him going in that direction at one point?
Well, what I liked about what you had to say, Daniel, is that you're shedding light on why this is such a smart move and why there's a need. Yes, there's houses everywhere, but why this house? Tell us a little bit about what you see this doing for communities in general, as well as those that you spoke about that really need that step up.
Yeah, look, we think it's a more quick and cost-effective solution to getting people off the streets. Or people, you know, not living in their cars. So where I'm in Victoria, we've got the highest rate of homelessness in Australia. There's like I think on average about 80,000, and there's about 30,000 people waiting for a house, and the average wait for that is 30 years. So people are couch surfing, living in cars. It's been getting worse, been neglected by government. I mean, they build them as well, but then it's just not enough to keep up with supply or demand, I should say. They also house a lot of immigrants every year, and they seem to get priority over people that are here. So it's just the more they let in, the further behind we get. Up north in Queensland at the moment, people are also having a lot of trouble living in their cars, and then their kids have been taken away from them as well because they haven't got a secure house. So the purpose of the tiny homes is that they're quick, they're cost effective, they're efficient, they are sturdy, and they do feel like a little house. And people do choose to live in these by their own choice. It's to help people get onto their feet again. So I think there's one place. Oh, go ahead. Sorry.
What do you do about placement? Where do you place?
Yeah, well, that's the thing we've been looking at. So a lot of the charities here actually own quite a bit of land as well. So we're looking at either that, or there's also we call Crown land, which is owned by the government, which is just sitting there in case they'll use it one day. So our proposal too as well, if we dig in and build in the infrastructure there anyway, the good thing about having tiny homes on wheels, you can set up a village in a location like that. And dress it up. We've got design so it doesn't look like a normal trailer park. It looks like a community, a proper, inviting, so to speak. The infrastructure is there. If for any reason there's going to be that area is going to be used, you can hook them onto cars, four-wheel drives, and drive them off and relocate down the road. And you have infrastructure is there ready to go. So that's one of our sort of, I guess, trying to persuade them as well that we'll put all the infrastructure in to get it up and running, and then when they want their land back, well, then everything's there ready for them to go. That's one cost I don't have to worry about, or one thing I have to worry about. Now I think there's
do the charities that the land you'd use for the charities, would they want something for it, or do they get some monetary compensation somehow?
No, not at all. Like I said, it's the one we approached. I pretty much had a contract signed with Salvation Army down here, and at last minute their hierarchy failed on it, which the guy I've been speaking to for about 6 months organising it was really disappointed. At the time, there's a funding issue, which was a joke because I knew the Federal Housing Minister in Australia. He said to me, when they want money, they walk in and we say, how much do you want? Write a check and that's it. So again, I'm not sure what we still don't know quite what the catch was, but I'm in talks with the same gentleman again, and he keeps saying, push it, please, I want this to happen. So we're trying. When there are charities, they shouldn't be getting any kickback from it. They might get I guess with community housing here, people pay a very minimal rent. So that's something we could do as well. The purpose, I guess, of having people in these communities too is to have a training area to retrain people. The purpose is to not have them relying on it for their entire lives. It's to get them back on their feet, get them back out in the workforce, which I think there's, I can't remember what state in America does this as well, actually, but you've got a community that does something similar. And one of the ladies I've been working with, she's been doing a lot of research, and she said they've got in these communities little training centres set up to upskill people. And that's the thing, you don't want people you want to get them off the streets and help them out, but you don't want them dependent their whole lives either. You need people to get back out there and fend for themselves. So that's the purpose of this.
So this is more transitional. This isn't
It
permanent.
is, yeah. Look,
okay.
Some people may not be able, might be too old or disabled, so that's different again. And you'd have separate villages accordingly. You'd have ones for domestic abuse victims would be separate, again, help them get on their feet. I mean, I'm sure they want to stay in a caravan all that time. Oh, no.
Yeah, and I think what you're talking about is called Community First. It's put on by, I think, Loaves and Fishes out of Texas. And they have a really good program to help the homeless people. They use builders in the area to build smaller houses, tiny houses. They have an RV park. They have a garden where they grow their own food and sell it. They have a mechanic shop where they teach people how to do repair work on vehicles. And they have a craft shop where people do crafts and then sell them at their store. And so that's the best one that I've seen anyway so far is in Texas.
Yeah, I think it's a great idea. It really is. And why it's not implemented here already or in more places, I don't understand. Again, I don't know what the reasoning behind it not happening. Again, I think I know here with government contracts and trying to get things government contracts, it can be a bit selective, and I guess everyone will say corruption as well. So it's who you know. It's just trying once you get in there, then you're okay. It's just trying to get in there. So that's why we're trying to maybe try and fund our own initially, just to get one up and going, so they can actually see what the finished product is like, and then also get publicity. Get crowd support, and that'll sort of, I think, push government into actually getting it done as well. But as you said, it's a transition stage for most people. It's helping them get back up on their feet, and we're going to try and base it around the one that you mentioned there, Robin, as well. We really like that idea.
Well, Chris had a question I missed, but we'll come back to it here. It said that our certifying authorities in New Mexico require New Mexico approved engineer to stamp each unit's plan on the plan before they issue an approval. Is NOAA certified organization able to help this area? In other words, NOAA certified in all states to issue certification. That's a real long question that I'll try to answer in just a sentence or two. It depends upon what the local New Mexico department is looking for the tiny house to be built to. If it's going to be built to the RV standard or a park model standard, then obviously we can certainly help with that. We are also approved in New Mexico as a third-party inspector of modular homes in New Mexico, and we have ISO IEC 17020 accreditation to inspect tiny houses, site-built houses, and modular houses. So we might be able to help out, Chris. If you want to email me, robin@noaacertified.org, I'll try to get some more information from you and help you out with that New Mexico. As far as the engineer, some places are requiring engineer stamps, but what is nice about a standard that everybody accepts, that everybody can buy into, is, for instance, ANSI 119.5, or in our area, IRC, International Residential Code. Those are prescriptive, what they call prescriptive standards and codes. So if you build to the floor system, for instance, that's in IRC, if you build that to that in your home, then you don't have to have an engineer stamp on that. However, some jurisdictions still require an engineer stamp to make sure that you're building to, for instance, Florida building code, because they do amendments to IRC. But anyway, the idea is an engineer stamp usually is required to take the neck out of the noose of the building code official, and it puts the engineer on the hook for making sure everything is done correctly, and that's the reason for it. So it could be a little bit pricey, and one of the reasons why we're looking to have some kind of a standardized code for tiny houses on wheels is so that we can enjoy prescriptive codes and standards that the engineer does not have to stamp in order to make it have it being approved by the local, what they call the authority having jurisdiction, the AHJ. All right. Any questions? Any other questions, guys? Coming from you guys, put them in the chat. We'd be happy to answer those. If not, I can share the. We just had a meeting with Colorado that I did go into. They're looking to use IRC with amendments to Appendix Q for their tiny house standard, and they asked for what kind of amendments they would have to make to IRC in order to make it tiny house. And I have an email that I could share with you, which talks, which is kind of interesting, that you might be able to use, Daniel, in your neck of the woods. I'd be happy to share that with you too. Is that all right with everybody? Can we do that? Can I share my screen? All right. This is to Mo and to Eric Freed. They're handling what's going on out there. And I sent them some, I'll show you some plans too, but this is not in IRC. They have a mandate to have a code by next July for tiny houses, and so they're scrambling to find what they called cobble something together. And with IRC, they're on the 2018 IRC in Colorado right now. They said, well, we'll take the IRC and then we'll take Appendix Q and we will make amendments to it. So they asked for suggestions to amendments to the IRC. Well, in IRC and probably in Australia building codes, they do not have a prescriptive rule for chassis. So you would have to have an engineer draw up every chassis and stamp it for every house that you're going to build if you're going to do it for full-time habitation. And so that's one gap that's in there. Also, the same thing for a foundation. Is it going to be permanent? Is it going to be temporary? Can it still be movable? Do you leave the wheels on? So that's got to be written. And then I don't know whether you're fighting frost lines. We don't here in Florida, but in some parts of the country, there is a frost line and all foundations need to go below the frost line so that the freezing and thawing doesn't move the house up around and crack the plaster or the wallboard or something like that. But the question that I posed to him is a rigid floor system chassis strong enough, because it does drive down the road, bouncing into potholes and et cetera like that. Is that strong enough so that you would in a small 400 or less square foot house that you could put a foundation underneath of a pier foundation that would be on the surface of the ground or just buried just a little bit, not below the frost line, so that if it did move from freeing and thawing a little bit, that you could come out in the springtime and just kind of level it back out again. So that's one possibility. And then the other possibility is a challenge that we're running into here in US and at NOAA and probably in Australia is that loft, trying to get height in the loft there. And one of the big deals is the secondary means of egress. In Appendix Q, you can't seem to get a window for the loft. So they said, well, you can use a skylight, which a lot of people don't want to put skylights. They don't want to penetrate the roof. It could be another hole in the roof. So applying building codes to tiny houses, NFPA had this suggestion: in a tiny home with a proposed raised sleeping area, the best approach is to allow its use maybe to request from the authority having jurisdiction an equivalent alternative per NFPA 5000, which is another building code for regular homes, or an alternative design in accordance with IRC R104. They'll let you do alternatives. And the request could identify the intended use for sleeping. That's a specific limited area clearances and access and intent to be permanently installed that would be otherwise be considered a raised bunk bed. So if we could do that, if we could write the standard either ASTM or in this standard that they're writing in Colorado, that the loft would be considered a raised bunk bed, then the egress window could be at the bottom of the stairs or at the bottom of the ladder. And we could certainly get in there. In IRC R310, I think is the egress, secondary means of egress requirements. Is that clear as mud, or did everybody get that? All right, good. Then what about a lot of tiny houses are built so that the toilet and the shower is closed off with a door, and then you go out the door and you go to the kitchen sink and you wash your hands. So the question is, in IRC or IPC, International Plumbing Code, there has to be in every house a toilet, a shower or tub, and a lavvy, and a kitchen sink. So could we eliminate the lavvy out of the bathroom if the kitchen is right outside the door? And what that would do would eliminate the requirement for a separate 20 amp circuit that would just be for the outlet by the lavvy. If you don't have a lavvy, then you don't have a 20 amp circuit requirement, which would help in your electric panel a lot, because that is a requirement in National Electric Code. And there's 2 appliance outlets in the kitchen. So if you're going to plug in a hairdryer or something, you could certainly do that there where you have those appliance outlets. So that's another gap that I made a suggestion. If the home is still movable, then do you have to have the traditional grounding requirements? In other words, you have to have a ground rod, 8-foot ground rod, at 2 locations 6 feet apart in most constructions, or you have what's called a UFR ground that attaches to the rebar in your footings. And that's a requirement. But in an RV park, the ground is on the cable that you plug in. In other words, it has 2 hots, two 120 volts, and 1 neutral and 1 ground, and that's how you ground your tiny house on wheels in an RV park. So could that work? And could a wastewater or water hookups be the same as an RV park with a quick disconnect or a potable water hose? Of course, in cold climates, you would have to have heat tape and insulation around those items. But if you're trying to keep it movable, which they are in Colorado, if you hardwire something with electric and you plumb it with a 3-inch PVC pipe going into the septic or sewer, and you have a 3/4 inch PVC or CPVC running into the water hookup, obviously those would have to be cut and redone. It's not quote unquote as movable as it could be. So that was another question. And then this is just why the Appendix Q won't work. A drop axle trailer here is 23 inches from the ground to the finished floor. The minimum ceiling height in a bath and a kitchen is 6'4". Everywhere else is going to be 6'6" or 6'8". And then you're going to need at least 4 inches for the loft floor, 6 inches for the rafters and sheathing, and from the loft down, you can be no more than 18 inches to this landing that they require in Appendix Q. And standing on that landing, you still have to have 6'2" in headroom. So if you do the calculations, the 76 inches plus the 4 inches means the loft floor is at 80 inches. The landing can only go down maximum of 18 inches, no more than that. So that's going to be 62 inches. And if you add you add the 23 inches of the to the finished floor of the trailer, and 62 inches to the finished floor of the landing, and the 74 inches of headroom that's required, and 6 plus inches for the roof, you're at 165 inches, and the maximum height you can do is 13.6, which is 162. So I sent all of those into the people there at Colorado to have them take a look at it. And so we're talking about requiring some kind of drawings that will be sent in to NOAA, so that we can, when we do the inspections, we kind of have an idea of what you're building. And so this is kind of a minimal drawing that I drew up of a 14-foot tiny home. And in it, you have basically a bed, you have an entry door, a bed, you have a through the wall air conditioning unit, you have a 3050 which window that does meet IRC egress requirements. And then you have a 2050 slider in the loft that would meet the RV requirements for an egress. You have a kitchen, you have a little storage. You can see where the electric panel is. You have to have clearance 30 inches in front of the electric panel and 24 inches in ANSI or 30 inches in IRC, or National Electric Code. A normal house has 30 inches in width of clearance. So you have that here. You have your toilet and you have your shower, and then basically some elevation plans showing the front, the back, and the 2 sides. So that's a real simple drawing that for a tiny house on wheels. So we'll probably be happy to share that with anybody if you put it in the who said that? Oh, Eric Robb, how you doing? Yeah, buddy. So anybody that's interested in any of that stuff, just email me, robin@noaacertified.org, and I'll be happy to share either the letter that I sent to Colorado or the little drawing that I have for that 14-foot tiny house. So that being said, anybody else got it? Anything before we kind of try to wrap this thing up? Other than I have to clean out my inbox.
I'm wondering if you'll keep us up to date or send me something to keep me up to date with your progress and, like any issues stumbling blocks you're having or any successes that we could use or learn from or share back and forth with. To Daniel.
Oh, sorry, I thought you were talking to Robin. Sorry. Yeah, definitely. I'll also, when I finish cleaning up the standards, so we're just adjusting it now. Happy to email a copy for you to have a look as well. Just get an idea how we're proposing our one for here in Australia, and also one that we're going to present to ASTM as well.
Sorry, my Zoom, so I didn't get that, but
That's all right.
I'll have to watch the rerun.
Yeah, all good.
Robin, you're on mute. Robin, you're on mute. There you go.
All right. Anybody that's interested in the NOAA Plus standards, you can just go to our website and they're right there for you to, we talk about the ANSI standards, but the ice and water shield on your roof. We talk about your loft requirements, Appendix Q. We talk about your stud requirements. We talk about your headers, which is something important, and your spans of your joists, and 140-mile-an-hour wind loads. But it's all here. Insulation is here. So anybody that's interested, those are the old standards. You're welcome to go there and share that and have that.
Cool.
And anybody that is a member, if you log into our back office here, we have our inspection guides, which tells you what the inspection stage 1, stage 2, and they will help you out. There's a little drawing here about turning radiuses that is really helpful in a lot of places. Stage 2, it talks about, the inspection that we're doing. And then there's these nice little drawings here that tells you what a collar beam is, what a header is, what a double plate is, what a floor joist is, and that kind of thing, so that we're all talking the same language. So I just wanted to share with those of you the resources that we have out there for you in order to utilize when you do, and we give free consultations to our members. So when you do a consultation, if it's not answered in something in that back office there, we certainly would encourage you to schedule a consultation with our inspectors. All right. Well, I'm going to turn it back over to Leanne to kind of wrap us up.
Wrap it up. Well, thanks everybody for joining us this evening, especially Daniel, all the way from Australia.
Thanks for
We
having me.
appreciate
Sorry
you
about the
taking
delay.
It's quite all right. It's quite all right. We still got a lot
Hope
out
your
of your
son is
talk,
feeling
so we
better.
appreciate it.
Thank you. I got a
Sorry.
lot of this too. Thank you.
I
Yes,
said, I hope
thank you for-
your youngin is feeling better.
Yeah, thank you. He's in the background whining a bit now. I thought he was going to run in, but he's okay at the moment. I'll tend to him now.
Well, just a reminder to everybody, tomorrow night we have Scott Banta talking, giving us all of his knowledge and expertise, along with Robin, on tiny house development, tiny house community development. If you want to build a village, it's definitely the place to come. He is sharing a wealth of information that's pretty much priceless, I would say. And then Thursday we'll have our inspector chat where we'll answer all your questions. And Sherry will probably have some topics that have come up over the last week since we missed you guys last Thursday. So with that, I'm gonna say goodnight, goodbye. We'll see you guys tomorrow. Thanks again, Daniel, for joining us. We appreciate your
Thank you for
time
having me.
and sharing all your plans with us. We wish you all the best, and do keep in touch with us and let us know how you're doing.
Will do, definitely. Thank you very much for having me. And yeah, I'll learn a lot from here too. So thank you. And I'll listen in again soon for sure.
Yes, great, great, great. And Tara, I'm not sorry, I don't know if it's Tara or Tara, but yes, we send a text out every day at 4:45, a text and an email. So you should get that again tomorrow.
Thank you, guys.
Okay.
Have a good night.
Thank you.
Bye.